from Nerd Church here, trying out a new camera angle, which will hopefully be a little bit less cringed and more bass. So this is why I'm here. I've realized that I have a lot of training as an elementary school teacher, and that means that part of my job is breaking down simple, complex things into simple things that everybody can understand regardless of their level of life experience. And I've realized that I was trying to make my argument the the effective experience of being a Catholic who, like who sticks to pretty traditional Catholic, like super traditional Catholic theology. Like, I have no problem with either of the four Marian dogmas, and honestly, I could be sold on a fifth. That's how conservative I am theologically. Totally different story socially, but that's another story. The point is that I've been trying to explain what it feels like when I hear someone say, "Oh, well, the virgin birth, right?" And I can just illustrate it. Because a lot of times when I hear Protestant or LDS or, evangelical raised Christians, and again, I'm not talking about people who are practicing that religion. I'm talking about people who are raised in that religion and still have a lot of that same mental architecture, because the religion that they are pushing against as they deconstruct is still shaping their habits of mind, because that's what they're pushing against, right? If they're saying this isn't in the Bible, they're taking something that they were taught was in the Bible, or that someone else is arguing is in the Bible, and they're saying it's not. So, I could give specific examples, but when Dan McClellan starts to give specific examples, people tend to accuse him of proselytizing, which he's not. It's just that Dan McClellan doesn't care that the Bible isn't in the Trinity. I don't care that the Trinity isn't in the Bible. The reason for that is that I don't believe that God told us everything that he wanted to say in Scripture, and that we had to work it out on our own. Dan McClellan, I don't know what he believes. Evidently, it's something that allows him to be LDS, which means that he believes that there's no Trinity in the Bible, because if that's what he believes, then he believes it because of direct revelation to someone. Not him, but somebody. But I don't know what his non-negotiables for, and I'm not really here to talk about Dan McClellan. I am here to talk about, okay, so it's the first day of kindergarten, and you are a little nerdy kid who you have gone in there, and you are ready to demonstrate your knowledge. And your teacher says, "Class, look! Here are all of the colors that we are learning about today. We have red and pink. We have," and you expect her to say, "We have pink with orange spots." But she doesn't say that. This is what she says. She says, "Class, look! We have all the colors we're going to learn about this year, all in this one bandana. And I'm going to hang it up on the wall, and we're going to show it. So here are all the colors. There's orange and red and red and red. And here, look, there's more red. I know there's a lot of red, and we'll talk about why that is. And then there's green and yellow. There's all kinds of colors in this bandana. And this is what, and if I tell you, this is what a bandana looks like, you're going to know that this is a bandana, right? Because we all know that this is what a bandana is. But what if I told you that not everyone has the same definition of colors? Because this, now, when I was a little kid, somebody told me that this was all red. That you couldn't even see any of the pictures in here, because it was all red. But then I learned that there were all kinds of different colors. And I first noticed that because I saw that this was blue and that was also blue, so that could not be red. So even though this is still red and this is all red, this red background here is all red, And this looks like it might be and this is also red, and that's red, and that's red, and that's red. There's so much red on this. And I know it's easy to be confused, but you just have to remember it's really easy to tell the difference between blue and green and red. So just remember, this is red. Now I'm going to make it easy for you. Before we get into all the other colors, I'm going to show you red again. So everybody in the class, say it with me. Red. We all know what red is. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret. A really long time ago, like a super long time ago, people thought could you believe that people thought that all of these colors were the same? They did. Now, it didn't take them too long to decide that this was not the same color as this, because that's pretty obvious, right? And this is green, right? Nobody ever thought that green might be red, because you can just hold green up to red and you can see that is totally different. And it took a while for people to realize that it wasn't until that people found that people actually saw oranges. And even then, this color was actually, they named the color of the fruit after the name of the Prince William of Orange, right? It was the House of Orange. So they started calling the fruit oranges, because oranges sound kind of like naranja, because the Spanish word for orange is naranja, right? The fruit, not the color. So it was naranja, which sounds kind of like orange. So they started calling them oranges. It's like, what is that? ¿Qué es eso? Eso es naranja. And then the Dutch guy says, what is that? However you say, what is that in Dutch? And the Spanish guy says, it's a naranja. And he says, orange? And yeah, so eventually they just start calling it an orange. So we decided, like at some point, like in the 18th century, this is not red. So that's red. Now, obviously, these are not exactly the same color. So we can kind of call this like old red. But this is just red. So if you want, we can talk about old red later, because sometimes, you'll still see like references to old red in a book. And I think there are some people who still sort of believe that old red is red, but it doesn't really matter. This is the modern world. And in the modern world, we all understand that this is red. So for the purposes of this class, yes, what's this sitting next to me? Yeah, this is just another bandana. This is a cotton bandana, and it came from India. And this is for tomorrow's lesson, though. We're not going to worry about this. Yes, I do see that the background in there is old red, but it's not really quite old red now, isn't it? Because here, I'm going to take this bandana again, and I'm going to hold it up next to it. And you can see that actually the color on this bandana, it's not really the same, is it? This is really very close to a brown. It's really more of a brown with like this in it. So, I don't even know what I would call this color exactly, but I don't know. It's just not red. Now, I was going to use this one, though, for the discussion of the differences between blue and green, because at one point people also thought that blue and green used to be the same color, but now, and then over time, the word definitions diverged, right? So you end up with like blue and green being different things, which it's easy to see why when you see these sort of odd off shades here, right? So in summary, this is red. So I want you to remember that. And when we have a quiz, and you have to mark everything on the paper, just remember this is red. Now, don't worry. I'm not going to trick you, okay? You might have to try to tell the difference. Like, as long as you can tell the difference between this and this, And so as long as you know that this is orange and this is purple, and that this is red, you'll be fine on the quiz, so you don't need to worry. And, if you want to grow up and, really get into it and, learn to study all about color theory, that's fine. And if your family is a family that calls old red red, that's okay. And, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong to think that. I just want you to understand that in our culture, this is what we call red. And and as we're studying what red means, we need to understand that what's going on in the book that we're reading, their definition of red isn't the same as old red. Because old red, especially when you put it in a bandana, looks a lot this looks a lot different because it's got black and white on there. So that old red is different from the original old red, which you're right. That was a good thing. That was a good call. You were really smart to point that out, that this shade is actually very, very close to the original shade of old red. But, that's really too much detail and too much nuance. Okay, I could go on like that for a while, but I don't want to belabor the point, and I want to get to I want to stop before it starts to get preachy. But that's my point, is that every time a Catholic hears somebody who is not Catholic aware talking about something related to like theology or church history or something like that, very often we are in the position of a child who has been told that this is red. And even though we are willing to concede that technically pink is a shade of red, we can't just say that that's pink because, oh, well, that's your definition of pink. We don't call things pink around here. Pink, that's a culturally specific designation. We're going to use the neutral term here, which is old red. And I can even write a very long paper comparing pink and old red and modern old red, right? I can write a paper about this. But I will still have to privilege a definition that tells me that pink is not light red. And that the real basic red is pink. And that means that even the most dedicated, most locked in to truth and reason and the scientific method Catholic, from their first day in their first Bible study class that happens at a university instead of, Sunday school, they are going to be hearing a definition of, they're going to be told that pink is red. And that pink has always really been red, and that if you look at the modern definition, there's like really nobody who thinks that pink is red. Or rather, they think that pink is red, and red just doesn't really count anymore. Now, here's the other thing. That Catholic kid, they were told all of that color theory at home. Their parents explained to them how you got from red to pink. They explained all that stuff. But the one thing they did not tell them was that there were people who thought that pink and red are the same thing. Just throwing it out there.